Okay, well, hello, Claire.
Hi, Guy.
Hello. Thank you for writing this wonderful book that we're about to talk about, which is here.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
There
Well,
it
thank
is.
you.
And it's also behind you, which so, if
Yes.
you ever
Product
need to, if
placement.
you ever forget the title, it's just there.
Yes.
Um, so, okay, well, most obvious thing is the water remedy. Three words, and folklore, ritual, and wisdom. So the word remedy jumps out at me first before we start talking about water, because
Hmm.
where is it that you feel that what we need remedying from? Is it what is the reason you wrote that word?
Oh, I just find that in these troubled times, we're all looking for different ways to find sort of solace and soothing and places of quiet and tranquility. And I'm always personally drawn to water, and it's been very powerful to me in my life during difficult times. And I wanted to explore that and why exactly that happens, and how it could apply, and if it would be of useful a benefit to other people as well. That kind of.
Hmm.
So I mean,
Well,
it
great.
started really when I was going through a difficult time, and I just went personally, and I went swimming a lot in my local Lido, in North London. And I found the act of swimming was a great source of solace and healing to me. And moving through the water and feeling the water running over me, and swimming, which felt almost like flying. It was a wonderful thing, and that sort of planted an idea for the book in my head, and which I've returned to later on.
Yeah, because this book touches upon lots of themes close to my heart as well, and I think water is one of the main reasons I got into pilgrimage. I think the holy wells and the rivers and that the sorts of things you're talking about were the reason that I thought, well, there's something really special. It's not just about churches. You can have holy water as well, and that somehow
Yeah.
felt really, really revitalizing.
Mm.
Um, and but so what took you from the Lido out into all of these different parts of the country and finding all these really special kinds of water sources and water bodies?
I moved out of London actually to Herefordshire, which is a land full of holy wells and lakes and springs. And so I spend more and more of my weekends going in search of them, to find these special places. And so that's really what's drawn me to them. And, once you start looking for these places, you just discover more and more, and want to visit increasing numbers of them, really. Um, so that's really what happens. And also, my love of swimming. I just love to swim. So, and to be by lakes, you know. I
Hmm. Do you have any examples of kind of mystical experiences that you had in any of these places when you started exploring?
Mystical experiences.
It could be on any level. It doesn't have to be sort of.
Yes, I mean it's not unless yeah, well, it's difficult words, isn't it? Mystical. You expect some sort of transformative experience that takes you to another plane or something. But I've had more kind of sort of gently reflective experiences. Um, I would say one of the most powerful places I went to was a lake in the Welsh Mountains, and I love lakes and mountains because you have to climb. It's like a pilgrimage to get to these lakes, isn't it? And then all of them. So it's a long walk to the lake, and then it's hidden, surrounded by mountains. It's very, very quiet and beautiful. And in the true pilgrimage style, I walked around the lake, and try and I mean it wasn't mystical seems overstating it, but it was a tremendously profound and restorative experience, and I think that's what I kind of hope for when I visit these places.
Yeah, I think mystical just means something that's mysterious, and
Yeah,
having a profound and restorative experience by walking around a lake. There is a mystery to that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
it's for me, mystical means anything that goes beyond our usual rational experience
Right.
and just has some kind of some kind of effect that we can't easily explain or articulate. It doesn't mean that it has to be unbelievably multidimensional. It just means that it's something that's out of the ordinary. And
I
I
think
think
that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. And yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's not in some sort of cosmic kind of, astral projection or something. That. It's just, it's just something out of the ordinary, out of the everyday. And but that's like pilgrimage. It's a chance to get out of your usual experience into something beyond that. Um, and which we should, and when you do it, you think, why don't I do this more often? Why don't I go on these journeys, or why don't I go to this place? Because when you do, it has a profound effect and a lasting effect, and also a memorable. It becomes a memorable experience, and it's a place you return to, well, a place I return to in my memory when I want to kind of relive that experience and that sensation.
that's very interesting. And actually, especially as water is often somehow linked to memory. I have a
Mm,
friend who's actually working on trying to turn water into a memory hard drive effectively. And lots of people have talked about water storing memory.
mm.
Maybe that's a little bit too mystical for now and to beyond the realms of the current scientific paradigm. Um,
Well, there's still, I mean, there's still so much we don't understand about water. I think you put me on to Gerald Pollack and his fourth phase of water, which is a whole other way of seeing it, a whole other scientific approach to understanding the mysteries of it. And there's people like Veda Austin who talk about the secret intelligence of water, which we know nothing of. We are still trying to understand.
yeah, I'm so glad you read the Gerald Pollack. I
Mm,
was so impressed when I met him with
mm,
Rupert Sheldrake for this dinner, and Rupert said he was the most important scientist alive today, in his opinion, because what he was discovering about water had impact on physics, chemistry, biology, all the major sciences, and particularly through gels. And this fourth phase of water is so interesting. The way that there could be this
mm.
really ordered part of water, and that has all these magical properties that we don't really understand, and even
Exactly,
something
yeah.
as simple as like the way that water travels up trees, we don't really understand because it doesn't have like a heart, so it doesn't pump the water around the tree.
Mm,
There's nothing to put pressure on the water to go up the tree, and yet it
mm.
can travel to the top of these huge redwoods, and
Yeah, that's
it's,
amazing. That's
we're
amazing.
just there are so
Mm,
many mysteries. Jelly, like
mm,
how does water stay within jelly, and how do
mm.
when you walk on wet sand, are you um,
Yeah,
how
you
does
just
it work? How come it's so tough, wet
mm,
sand versus soft sand, like with dry sand? We don't. There are these basic things like
mm,
surface tension of the sea,
mm,
like, and and Gerald Pollack makes the sense that because water is just so everywhere,
mm.
and we think science thinks it must already understand it because it's everywhere.
Yes,
Like we must have understood water, and actually we don't,
we
and
haven't even started
we haven't
really.
really started. Yeah,
Mm.
um, but
I think that's the thing that I wanted to kind of with the book. I wanted to get beyond seeing water as a utility, something we just sort of take for granted, and see, beyond that, seeing its other aspects, its spiritual and well-being aspects, and also to, as a result, to kind of to value it more and to rather than abuse it, which we have rather the human race has really rather started has in fact done for many decades.
so it's more what you're saying is more about coming into relationship with water, is it? That sort of
Yes, I
you
think
that
so.
it
Yes.
yeah, some kind of you giving it something of your being and your love and your
Yes,
well-wishing.
that's a very good way of putting it. Building a relationship. I mean, it's an overused word, the word reconnection, but it is that kind of thing. Building a relationship and um, thinking, what we can do for water and it's been a tremendously one-way relationship, I think, with water. We've just taken from it, and
Yeah,
I think for centuries really, and taken from it and taken it for granted. And
yeah. I suppose in the way that when people hug, I mean, I suggest to people when they hug trees that they maybe ask the tree a question and the tree maybe speaks back to them in tree.
mm,
Not necessarily English, and often, as Tolkien put it with the Ents, they speak very slowly, trees. But
yes,
similar with water, perhaps water can speak back to us, and or it's a kind, if that's too far for you, and
mm,
just that's a bit too woo-woo, then you could just say, well, what does it mirror back to you? Like when you put
mm,
your intention into it, like what comes back, even if it's you
yeah,
projecting and it whatever it is you want, however you want to explain it, this idea of having some kind of relationship with it, that
Yeah.
where you're dissolving the boundaries between you and the non-human world.
Mm.
We need to do more of that, I think, because it's clearly not all about us. And
Yes, yes, that's a very good point. And I mean, also, the thing about water is it has so many different moods. It reflects the human condition in so many ways because, it can be still and tranquil, or it can be tremendously, choppy and tumultuous, like a stormy sea. So you can see yourself reflected in water. Um, so as you say, it's a sort of it's a kind of mirror. Um, it's just yeah,
no, well, we're going a lot into the mystical here, but one of the things
yeah,
I love about your book is it's so practical as well, and how you're often showing people what to do. And okay, well, you get to the water, and what do you do when you get there, and
well,
how
yes,
do you engage with it, and where do you go, and maybe explain a few things about that,
So I'm
for the
glad you
listeners.
I'm glad you picked up on that, and I'm glad you liked it because I was a magazine journalist for years, and it's one of the things we always like to try and do is have a sort of a takeaway, so something that people can actually apply as what I wanted to do. So you sort of because I think the danger is often when you go to somewhere, like maybe you go to a waterfall or a spring, and you're there, and all that people can think to do is take a photograph. And that is it's a very fleeting experience, and not I wouldn't say it's a tremendously enriching experience, but if you go there with a different intention and with a purpose and with a simple ritual, nothing very fancy or complicated or woo woo, just a simple ritual to honor the water and to your place with next to the water and your experience, it just makes the whole experience much deeper and more memorable, in fact.
Yeah, because there's this strange thing about the mystical and the practical is that actually to have often the best mystical experiences, you actually need to be very practical and very straightforward and bodily about it, rather than having sort of
Mm.
lots of highfalutin ideas. You need to
Yes.
maybe just put your hands in the water or
Yeah, yeah.
filter it and drink it, or
Mm.
what are the if you were to come, let's say Clare Gogerty arrives at a holy well, what does she do?
Well, what I do is, well, first of all, it's the pilgrimage thing. Bring it back to pilgrimage. Just getting to the well is part of the experience, isn't it? So it's the journey to the well, and then when you arrive at the well, what I do is walk around it, and rather than rush towards it. To walk, if you can walk around, it's because some are more difficult to walk around because in a wall or something. But I walk around, and then to sit beside it and to just take a moment and um, and then to think of and then to connect with it. So by putting your hands in the water, or putting a piece of cloth in the water and then put it on your face, um, or just putting your toes in the water or whatever. Good. I mean, I think getting part of yourself in water is quite important to have that physical connection, even if it's just your hands. I
Yes.
mean, I would suggest drinking it, but of course you can't always trust the quality of the water because you've got
No, but you can trust the quality of water filters.
Yes, yes, I've learned that from you actually, that with the water filter thing. It's very useful.
They're really good.
Mm.
They're really good.
I've got much better.
Um,
Mm.
well, so that's a holy well.
Yes,
What the other ones, I suppose, are river sources. They're quite similar to holy wells because they're sort of spring-like.
yes.
What would you do at a river mouth? I'm interested in that, like where it meets the sea.
Well, I suppose how you arrive there, isn't it? I mean, one of the great walks is a walk from the source of the river to the sea, um, which can be a sort of a metaphor for life, can't it? Growing from something very small and growing larger, and traveling over rocks and meanders and so on, and then emerging at the sea where we became well, the moment where the river meets the sea is a very powerful one because it's the moment when the river becomes part of, it merges with this vast infinite body of water, which could be read as our experience of death, is what I
Mm.
think. So we become from this one thing, we become part of this massive universal thing.
Yes.
Um, and I have a particular fondness actually for estuaries, which are, of course, the part where the river meets the sea. And so, I mean, what I do, I would just do, I don't know, I just do a few, maybe just do a few little breathing exercises and a couple of kind of yoga stretches, and I just take time to think really, and just to stop and think, and make some notes.
Mm,
I wouldn't um, maybe I think maybe take a pebble. I think it's to take a pebble. I don't know,
yeah.
things of that sort.
I
Mm.
love that metaphor of the river becoming the sea at death. And I think what's so wonderful about it is you can't see where the end of the river is. And
No.
that is, I imagine, how
Mm.
it is to die, that you just merge and you kind of dissolve in a way that, and dissolving is a water word,
Exactly.
solution, it's like
Mm,
you
mm,
sort of merge slowly and there's no barrier between you and the river. And I mean, there are, I suppose you can see like the line of where it is, but
mm,
on another level, there's no barrier too. And it's really special that,
mm.
yeah, so, and then of course the other thing is the ocean then becomes the rain again and the clouds, and then it starts the whole journey again, and it becomes part of the river again. So
This is the circle. It's the circular thing, which is how I like to think of life, and as a sort of circular process, and which water, of course, very much embodies. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons the Eastern philosophy likes the concept of reincarnation is because they see this cyclic example in nature everywhere, this
Yes, exactly.
cyclicity and
At the moment we've seen it so much, aren't we? It's spring, we've seen everything come back to life, and you think if plants and nature and water does that, well, we may too, but in different shape or different form.
yeah,
We'll
I
pass
mean,
the same kind of life force, aren't we? Is what I believe, and we go back to what we were. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's a whole discussion and very
Mm.
complex and many different opinions on
Yes.
it all. But
Mm.
I like the thinking of the cyclicity in nature and how we can
Mm.
bring that more into our own lives and how we look at life itself. So yeah, in terms of so we've had the practicality and mystical, but then there's also this human the way that we have always, as a society and a culture, have connected with water, and there are often myths and folkloric stories attached to water bodies and sources and holy wells.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
which was the kind of, well, one or two that most surprised or enchanted you whilst you were exploring this whole thing?
Well, my favorite, well, there's so many characters and folkloric characters associated with water, which is, because I think because it's such a mysterious and unknown quantity, often, it's a lot of lakes and things you cannot see what is within them. So you get these characters like Jenny Greenteeth, who's this sort of swamp-like witch character who comes out of the bog and drags children to their sticky end. Who's always that she always sticks in my memory. But one of my favorite, I think it was my favorite sort of folk creatures are the selkies, the seals that shapeshift into human form, and they prefer. I think selkies prefer to be a seal, but occasionally they get beguiled by the life of the human and come ashore and take off their skin,
Mm,
and have the misfortune then often of uh, meeting someone, a man usually. I think mostly women, female selkies, getting married and then being trapped in a human form if their skins are stolen. And then it's all a question, and then it's all a question of what is their identity? Are they seals or are they humans? How do they get back to their true nature? Um, and
mm,
and there's so many stories about them and about how this people steal their skin so they can't get back into the sea. It's very sort of powerful kind of images and sort of often tragic. Very few happy endings for Saki. Similarly, with the kelpies, which are the mystical seahorses, which come galloping on shore and change shape again and then get married and well, actually, what they do, usually take a human back under the water, and that human comes to a sticky end because they never resurface. Anyway, so they're very potent, all these stories, and have and also, you know, the fact that they have endured for so many years, these mythic characters, and you know, are still very powerful now, and they capture our imagination.
Yeah, I mean, like The Little Mermaid recently had a redoing by
Yeah,
Disney, and Aquaman is this whole new thing of human becoming a merman king, you know,
and I don't
and
know Aquaman.
Aquaman is quite fun.
Yeah,
It's a bit sort of thrillerish,
yeah,
but I think all of this points to kind of this there's a fear around water as well. I mean, people drown
mm,
in water, and
mm,
we know that the ocean, whilst it's incredible and vast, it's also terribly scary and
yeah, yeah,
um,
sure.
completely tempestuous, and
Mm,
you could easily be sucked under. And
mm,
so I wonder whether these folkloric stories are partly warnings of, don't, although we are deeply connected to water,
watch out.
don't watch out. That if you
Mm,
try and be something you're not, you
mm,
can come to a sticky end. Having said that, I think they're also showing us how similar we are to the we are water. I mean, this is the other obvious thing that people
mm,
always say,
mm.
and then I mean, people often say, well, we are mostly water, and you're
Yes.
taught that at school, and it's not
Mm,
like it's a new idea,
mm,
but I think it is to real the implications of that are huge. The fact that I think Gerald Pollack says 70% of our mass is water, but 99.9% of our particles are water,
you're
and
right.
or
Mm,
something
mm,
crazy, like
mm,
huge
mm.
number, and that must mean why the full moon has such an effect on people because it can move the tides, so
Yeah,
it
yes.
probably can move what's
Things
going
in
on
us.
in our own
Yeah,
bodies, and
yeah.
um,
Mm,
so we are so deeply connected, and yet there is this separation too.
mm.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, just going back to your exploration of the land and the different places you found. You're in Herefordshire, which is a beautiful place for springs and wells. But
Mm.
what's your favourite place in the book? I mean, you could go for something that people wouldn't expect, like more secretive, or just you could just go for one of the blockbuster places. But
Oh, it's hard to choose. I mean, one of my most favourite adventures was in Ireland when we went to, I was with a group of people actually, and we went looking for this well. I should get off. I mean, I am drawn to wells more than anything. I should try and find something else to talk about. Anyway, there was this what it was a well that was once a pilgrimage site, but had become very overgrown, and it's difficult to find. And lots of wells actually aren't on maps, so you may have found it. I don't know. So
yeah, no, you have to go to other places to find them. Yeah,
find them, yeah. So it's like and so you have to know somebody who knows where they are, you know. And this well was in this guy's field, this farmer's field, and we had to have permission to go and find it, and then we had to go and find it, which took a bit of finding. But the actual well itself was very beautiful. It was had two carvings, one of Saint Bridget and one of John the Baptist. I think it was John the Baptist, yeah. And also, which was interesting, the kind of combination of the pagan and the Christian, you know, on the one well. And apparently
yes,
people, young people, young couples would come there if they're trying to conceive a child. But it had been totally overgrown and neglected. So it felt like a very special place for us to find. And it was actually, it was on, I think we went on Lunasar actually, and we had Bridget Crosses with us. No, not Lunasar.
uh,
Yes, not Lunasar.
yeah. That's well,
And
Bridget is a Christian saint version of Bride, the goddess,
yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
and then John the Baptist. I mean, Rupert Sheldrake's theory about John the Baptist is that
Mm,
he was a little bit more pagan than just sort of nice, straightforward, Church of England Christian, because
yeah.
he was Rupert thinks of John the Baptist as an actual drowner. So he would hold because everyone used to come to the River Jordan,
A
and when
drowner,
they'd
is
have
that a
their
term?
experience with
Yeah.
John, they'd come away thinking, I've seen the light,
Mm.
I feel reborn, I've lost the fear of death. And all of these things, all of these outcomes are the sorts of things you say after you've had a near-death experience, or people say after they've had near-death experiences, very well documented. So Rupert's theory is that John was actually holding them under the water until they had a near-death experience. Then he
Oh,
pulled out
right.
just in time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because I just can't understand how baptism could have had all of those impacts, Talk
Yeah.
about mystical experience. If you want to give
Yeah.
someone a mystical experience, that's the way to do it.
Just around.
I mean, it's a
Um,
wild theory, and
mm,
unfortunately, it's only a theory. It's not a hypothesis because you can't test it scientifically. Well, I
mm,
suppose you could. You can't test whether John the Baptist did it, but you can test now what what
yes, this is
happened.
not almost drowned.
Not sure that it would pass the ethics committee, but
Yes, well, it's supposed to be a
anyway,
very peaceful experience, isn't it? Drowning, actually. But
well,
I'm not sure in that by that method necessarily.
maybe
It's a
not.
bit
Well, I
more.
suppose it depends if you trust him and you kind of know, hundreds of others are doing the same thing, So
Yes, yes, it
I
might
guess
be.
anyway, that's a whole side thing,
Yes.
but
Anyway,
it
he's
would make,
off.
but John is connected with water, and so
Mm,
is Bride.
mm,
She's
mm.
the water
Water
goddess.
and
So
fire, and fire's her thing, isn't it? But yeah, but yes, yeah. Anyway, anyway, at this well, we went and we soaked our crosses in the water and we laid them down and made little prayers or intentions, and so forth. And it just felt anyway. It just felt like a very powerful place. And the fact that I mean, it was so amazing that the spring, still flowing. It was still clear, and it was just waiting. It was just always waiting. There was waiting. So it was just waits for you. It's there for to be discovered, and that I think that's really, really.
yes, that's a lovely way of putting it. The wait, it just waits for you. Are
Mm,
you? Um, why do you said, I'm drawn to Wells, perhaps I should talk about something else. Well, for me, if you say that, that means that we should definitely talk about that because
mm.
what is it about Wells that holds this mystery and magic for you, that keeps you coming back?
Yeah, I suppose it's the things. I think I think it's because they're so. It feels like the start of things. It feels like the origin of things. As a well, a spring. I mean, it's where water comes directly from the earth. Um, and it has and yeah, you think about how important that was for our ancestors, who must have regarded it as the most incredible thing to find this life-giving substance
Yeah.
just emerging from the rock. And it's they're vital and they're fresh and they're lively. And um, I don't know. I suppose.
No, the origin of things, that's a pretty good answer, I think.
Mm.
Um, and also the fact they're coming from the dark and the deep and
Oh yes, I know.
mysteriously, and they just suddenly
Yeah,
pop up, and you're, wow,
it's
how
true,
did
and you
that?
don't know where they've come from, how far they've come. They could be right down in the core of the earth. Or it's probably from an aquifer, but I mean, because I live very near the Malvern Hills, and there are over 100 springs around the hills here, and they all, I mean, the water is so cold and clear and mostly drinkable, actually, not all of it. Um, and it's just the most life-giving force, really. It's just a wonderful thing to have and to drink, in fact, and to be near and in. Um, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes wells and it's sort of default mystical because you just don't know where
Mm.
they're coming from.
No, you don't
They're
know.
mysterious by default, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, the bubbling up from the unconscious. It's very,
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah, that's a good metaphor, actually. Mm.
yeah. Um,
Actually, I remember actually once when I came on the pilgrimage with you many years ago, when we went to Canterbury, and at the beginning of the pilgrimage, we took some water from a well in the castle, and we took it with us to Canterbury and
oh yeah,
poured it in. We mingled it with water in a sort of roadside spring in Canterbury.
oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yes, and I really love the idea of I really love the idea of taking water from one well to another, or to kind of uniting it. And it sort of marked the end of the pilgrimage. It was very impactful, very impactful, and it's something I sort of try and do now more frequently.
Mm. It's also one way of bringing the nature into a church because if you pour it into a font,
Oh yeah.
if you take the water from the beginning of a journey, then pour it in the fonts along the way, you're sort of dripping your influence along literally along the way.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah, I think. Well, and also water is central to our own well-being and our health and and our spirituality, as we've discussed.
mm,
And this is always the big question for me, which is with pilgrimage, there's this great ecological crisis, not even looming. We're in it now.
mm.
And you think, well, what's the point of doing a pilgrimage when really you've got all these other options? You could be doing all these things to actually help save the planet,
Mm,
and actually help
mm,
like clean up a river or something.
mm, mm.
And and all these things are going to holy wells and sitting by them meditatively and quiet, seem a bit indulgent, you could argue.
You could.
But I've changed my. I mean, I've often had that as a sort of thing going on in the background in my head, but over time I've started to realize one thing that comes with the crisis of ecology is the crisis of mental health too, and so
Mm,
I think people are going to need these sorts of practices, and
mm.
maybe it's better than most to go back into nature to heal ourselves and realize who we are and what we're connected to. Because often mental health crisis is a lack of connection
Yeah.
to what's real, and I just wonder if you feel the same kind of way that although that you could be doing all these things like cleaning up rivers in a more practical way, that the sorts of things you're suggesting have a value. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Well, I think, well, one, you can do both. I try to very much to be actively involved in local campaigns and so on. But I also think that you, by doing these simple meditative practices, it helps you appreciate and value what you're seeing and help you, and then may prompt more people to not only look after themselves, to take care of it as well as feel the benefit it has for themselves and take care of themselves. And I think you're right. The state of the world and the state of everything is so overwhelming and distressing that we need these moments of quiet and to take a breath and
Yeah,
restore ourselves. And watery places are one of the best places to do that. I would suggest. Um, you know, they offer much potential for that. Um, but you can do both. You can be an activist as well as a meditator.
yeah,
I
yeah. I like
suggest.
that. The both and.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and anyway, so also I think going to sit quietly or do a little ritual by a lake or whatever, it's better than not. You know what I mean? So it's better than just staying in and and being depressed or staying in and feeling hopeless. This is an act, isn't it? It's an active thing to do, and it has no downside that I can see.
yeah. It was taking charge.
Mm, mm.
Um, so you, I mean, you bring in science, folklore, geography, psychology, poetry, all
Yes.
of these different things around water. And
Mm.
um, how did you do that? Did you in the weaving all the threads
Yes,
into
well,
each other?
I wanted it to be like a sort of compendium, a compendium of water. So it's something you could oh, pun, an unintentional pun, dip into, and find little things, find things to interest you. And I find it, I just enjoy that way of writing. I like to, I don't, I have this kind of fear that readers might get bored. So I sort of, think, well, I'll just do a list here of interesting places they might like to visit, and
Yeah,
because because I do find some non-fiction books, you get them and they're just solid texts for like hundreds of pages. And, and it can be a little off-putting. And also, I'm just used to writing magazine features, which are more kind of an assemblage of different boxes and lists and interesting information.
yeah. It's really good. I mean, it's
Mm,
also how nature is. There are all these different things going on at the same time. It's not like you can't really separate it out too easily. Also, the other
no.
thing I love about the book is it's so thin. It's
It's quite
short.
slim, isn't it?
Uh,
It's also got a very nice mustard spine. You notice that?
yes, I do like the mustard spine.
Yeah, yeah.
The mustard stars on the front as well.
Yes, it's quite sort of snazzy.
Very snazzy, yeah. Right, I'm going to okay, well before I do that,
Mm.
was anything particularly difficult to write, or was the stuff, or the other one, which is the most flowing?
Well, the most difficult thing about writing a book is the enormous enormity of the subject. So, you could write a book about each of the chapters, really, and people have, of course. So I think it was just the hardest thing was distilling the information into what could be useful and interesting. Um, and whereas I found it all quite, to be honest, I didn't find it a bit difficult to write because it's all so interesting and enjoyable. And uh, yeah, I think I probably, I mean, and that was what I did enjoy about it was doing the actual research, actually getting out into the country and finding these places. Uh,
Mm.
yes, and just exploring the subject really.
Yeah. And were there any issues with the publishers? Did they just get it immediately? Did they understand the water thing?
Well, I think it's the publishers are Welsh publishers and just the University of Wales publishers, and they got it. Yeah, they got it immediately, and also because a lot of the content is about in Wales. And there's lots of Welsh places in it, and there's
Mm.
waterfalls and so on. So it has a kind of slightly Welsh skew. But yeah, they were very supportive and totally got it and really helpful and extremely good editors and so on. So that really helped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'm just going to look do a bit of Lectio Divina, which basically means opening a book at a random page and then putting your finger somewhere, and
Oh,
we can talk about what happens.
Lectio
I've
Divina.
done it.
Okay.
Okay. I've opened it, page 76, Bath, Somerset. Well, that was where I was born. Well, not
Mm.
born, that's where I grew up.
Mm. Spooky.
Yeah. Um, wow, look at that.
Oh,
So
that's probably not. I can look myself.
the steam from the hot springs in the swampy ground of what would become Bath must have seemed miraculous. Pretty soon, however, the mineral-rich water was put to good practical use. There is evidence of human activity around the springs from 8000 BC. It was the Romans who maximized the benefits of this natural resource from AD 43 and called it Aquae Sulis. It became a sanctuary for recuperation and rest and boasted a temple to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom and medicine. Yeah, and then the baths that are famous there, and they've just recreated the baths in Bath, so you can go and have a.
Have you been in these baths in the baths?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, my parents still live there, so
Oh
I
right, yeah,
I
yeah.
go and
Mm.
we used to do a couple of pilgrimages where the final destination was not Bath Abbey, but the actual baths and getting in the water and
Oh goodness, yeah.
really special. I mean, the water comes from, as you're saying, we don't know where it comes from. It comes from 15 miles away
Mm.
from the Mendips, and then
Oh,
they
does it? Oh, I didn't
yeah
know
the Romans had to pump it up and the hot
Okay.
yeah
Pump
it
it
was
up.
amazing,
Mm.
amazing discovery.
No, I didn't know. I just thought it just came from the ground beneath the baths. So there again, that's interesting.
And they also this is another cool crossover with the church, the abbey, which is that they now use the hot water to do the underfloor heating,
Oh,
which is really,
excellent.
really great use of that.
Well, it's a bit like in Iceland, isn't it? Everything is sort of they don't have any fuel bills because the heat all comes from the hot
Yeah,
water. Yeah.
exactly. Um,
That's sensible, isn't it? In using natural resources sensitively. Mm.
exactly. Um, so I
Yes,
guess
that bit was quite an historical bit you did in your
I
Alexia
know it's a little bit historical.
Divina.
I didn't really kind
Yeah.
of. I could do another.
Well,
I'll
it
do
doesn't really
another.
get the
No, there's
flavour,
no rule that we have to.
but it did have your bath connection, so that was good. And I do
Okay,
love a spa. I do love a spa time.
but this is quite good. So taking the waters, Malvern. But I love the Zen saying, the quote that you bring up at the beginning, which is, "If you want to understand the teaching of water, just drink."
Yeah.
And I think that's true. I think that's the most. That's in a way seems like a good metaphor, a good saying for the whole book, which is
Mm.
get to the water, put your hands in it, drink it,
Mm.
put your toes in it, dip a cloth in it.
Mm.
That it's a sort of be with it rather than have all these ideas about it and feel it rather than
Yeah.
think it. And
Yeah. I mean, that's why swimming, I think swimming is so powerful too, because you're in it and you're moving through it. And and it has, you're surrounded by it. It's immersive physical experience, isn't it? And so it's what, it's just very powerful.
so
Yeah.
just open another one, which is these are quite fun. Watery wisdom, Clutes, and
Oh
then
yes, Cluses. Yeah, Cluses is a bit of my bugbears actually.
I know there are a lot of people with bugbears because they're often sort of nylon, aren't they? And they don't.
Yeah, well, they don't. I mean, I hope everybody knows what a klute is, but it's a rag tied. It's basically something tied to a tree by a well, isn't it? And they can just look terrible. I mean, I mean, it's
They
a
look
plastic.
terrible. Also, they stay there forever, and
They don't biodegrade. I mean, I think if you use a bit of sort of organic cloth or something, or a natural or some natural offering, you may have found on your route, I think
yeah,
that would be just as good, really. You don't need to bring a sort of you know, all sorts. People bring all sorts of things, don't they? Sort of things that never that never perish. They're forever, just looking more and more tragic, and look like well, they look like litter, really, look like litter. But I mean, I do like the idea of bringing something to a well as an offering. I think that's another way to build a relationship with a place of
yeah,
water is to bring something as an act of gratitude and respect and reverence, and then you can bring something. That's why I like your idea of transporting water from one place to another. Um, and also you could just it could be something like a leaf with you could write a message on a leaf and put it in the water, something like that. I like to write the names of people who died on leaves and let them go down the river, down the stream.
that's lovely. Yeah,
Mm.
letting go, letting
You
it
think,
flow
yeah,
away.
yeah,
I've just found your reasons to visit a well. I'm just
all
going to
right,
read them out like as a list. To make a wish, to
yes,
foretell the future, to seek healing, to place a curse, because there are a lot of curses found at the bath, the
oh,
baths, and then to incubate a dream. That's pretty cool. The idea of
yeah.
sleeping next to one to actually have better dreams, and then to baptize a child. Yeah, it's a
I love that
lot.
dream incubation thing at the St. Winifred's Well in Wales. You can do. I think I don't even still do it now, but for a long time there was a practice where you go and lie beside the well to prompt dreams of significant dreams. And I mean, I wonder if I'm sure that works if you sleep beside water. It must have an effect on your subconscious and what
Yeah,
you visualize.
I've heard that sometimes water can sap your energy if you're sleeping over it because it's such a repository for energy. But it sounds like this is actually something that people used to do. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it was a practice. Hadn't heard about it sapping your energy. Didn't realize that was possible.
well, sorry, I've got to get this right. I mean, it was a water dowser, and they said if you stand on this line over the water line, you will find your energy dropping. But
Yeah,
um, I don't. That can't. It might be different from next to a well because the well's more the water coming up. It's not. It's not going down. So it might have a different feeling. I mean, I need to be think. I need to some. Hopefully, one of our listeners will put us right on this.
yeah.
Um, well, I mean, just that little section there shows you really give a kind of compendium of different ways that it can be connected with and thought
Yes.
about. But if you had to take, if once they finish reading the book, what do you want readers to carry away with them? What was the overall message, or what do you want the book really? How do you want it to function in their lives?
Well, my dream would be for people obviously to hold on to it and take it with them, perhaps, in a rucksack or a glove compartment, and to go out and to find watery places that have meaning for them, and to refer to it. And I mean, I really love it to be a practical use to people. I mean, I tried to include lots of suggestions of places well, I have included lots of suggestions of places to visit and what to do when you get there, and sort of history and the folklore tales surrounding those places. So it's in some ways it's like a guidebook to the mostly British watery places. So I just love it to continue and to be used. Not sure, I thought mostly people would just pick it up and dip into it, but a couple of people I know have just sat and read it from start to finish, which has been very gratifying, and then made notes of jotted down places, suggestions of where they may travel to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be a dream anyway. People to actually use it to be a sort of to continue to be referred to for time to come.
that's great. That's
Mm-mm.
a book that actually gets used is a very important thing. And
Yes.
then
Mm.
just well, you. You mentioned there are places you need to go to find wells. They're not always on the map. Like, I think megalithic is pretty good, megalithic.co.uk.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah.
Then also there's this guy who's done this, is it called Old Wells or Holy Wells or something? But he's created a website. We'll put
Oh,
it in
yes, I've seen that. That's
the
really good.
description.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's like all the
Um,
different regions. They
mm.
have Google Maps of all the different wells and springs and
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned to him in the bibliography.
great. Yeah, yeah,
That's
you
the
do have really
website,
good
yeah.
bibliography in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. Those are really good tips, actually. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, that megalithic portal is very good, actually. 'Cause, yeah, my other big interest is stone circles and prehistoric sites. I'm always sort of traipsing off to those as well.
Well,
Yeah.
stone and water seem to have some kind of relationship, don't they?
Hmm.
Don't
It's
know.
funny actually, because lots of if you think about it, lots of stone circles and megaliths are positioned nowhere near water. In actual fact, in fact they're far from water, aren't they? Because they're usually on beautifully situated, beautiful
Yeah.
views, fantastically sited, but not near water necessarily. So um, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, or if that's just a coincidence, just an accident. I don't know
Just
what
noticed that that wells are often have stone casings around them, and
they do.
I suppose that's what I meant. And also, I guess rivers, stones on the riverbeds and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's natural world.
This is a hard final question, but if you had to distill your relationship with water into a single image, moment, or metaphor, what would it be?
Oh, crumbs, yeah, that's quite to say. Well, let me see. Well, probably, I think it would just be something as simple as turning on the tap, turning on the tap in the kitchen and marveling at the journey of the water and where it came from and sort of all the very different ways it contributes to our lives and the fact that the fact that turning on tap and getting water in your own home is an incredible thing. And so and then all the many uses you can put that water to. So
That's a good
maybe
one.
something as pedestrian as that. And then I probably
No,
just
pedestrian is good.
yes, and then I probably just make a cup of tea with that water and be grateful.
Obviously, pedestrian is a very pilgrim word because of the foot.
Oh yes, that's
Um,
true.
we don't mind that. Um, well, so yeah, it's been really great talking to you, and I'm just so grateful, I think is the word that you've written this because someone needed to do this and
Mm.
you've done it. So
Oh, thank
that's
you.
good. And hopefully it'll sell very well and lots of people will find love and solace and soothingness from reading it and from all the ways that you suggest people connect. And hopefully this could lead to a bit of a water connection, reconnection
Yes.
revolution. And
Oh well, that'd be brilliant.
yeah, we all of these contributions that people like you are making are contributing to the next phase of us. We've got to move back somehow into more connection, and your
Yeah.
book will help people do that. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your support, and I really, really appreciate it. And
Yeah,
it's been such a great to have a proper conversation.
yeah, I know it's been a while. Great. Well, onwards journey. I hope you flow well.
Yes, 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 indeed. Maybe a
Yeah,
path be not turbulent, but smooth.
there we go. So many water words, aren't there?
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. All right. Bye
Bye.
then.
Thank you. Bye.